You're breaking my concentration, Sabrina.
Good.
Hello and welcome to another.
I love that Doug plays along. Thank you, Doug.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Tech Karaoke. This week we've got an amazing guest, and Doug is going to introduce himself and let us know why he's an amazing person and why we're happy to have him on the show. We've been looking forward to this episode for quite a while. So, Doug, please introduce yourself to our audience.
Hello, my name is Doug Dabérius, and I'm at VMware, and I'm responsible as the director for Business Readiness, helping our VMware Telco field sales teams, customers, and partners help our communication service providers get the best value and be able to follow their business plans in the most optimal way. Been in the industry for 38 years, love technology, love people, and love business. And I'm just thrilled to be here as part of the Tech Karaoke activity that we're going to have now. So thank you so much, Sabrina and Joe. This is a fantastic opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Doug. And one of Doug's other favorite passions that we love to discuss is astrophysics. So he and Miss Schaefer have that in common quite a bit. So Sabrina, please introduce yourself.
All right. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you again as my light gets unplugged there. Yes. So Sabrina Schaefer, we are so ready for today. Doug is one of the most fascinating and interesting people that we get to work with. And I am very excited for the Joe clowning that's about to take place. That's mostly why I'm here. That, and I am known as your impartial judge.
Yeah. And the impartial judge is the unfortunate reason we have to have Sabrina on, because I keep looking for a way to cut her from the show and have not been able to do that yet.
Right. That's right. No
Excellent.
mercy.
Without further ado, Doug, can you confirm that you have just sent over the slides and that they have not been looked at in advance or discussed in advance?
I can definitely say that I sent over the slides very recently, just a number of minutes ago. And as far as I know, you have not seen them, Joe. And even if you had, you wouldn't have had time to do much with them. There was no notes or anything in the bottom, which I actually took out, like speaker notes or things like that. So I think you're getting a fresh deck. And I think this is going to be a great start for you to see how you interpret what we have on our slides.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate it. And Sabrina, can you confirm that?
I can confirm that. Yes, I can. That I'm willing to agree with you on. Yes, you have not seen the slides.
Well, excellent. And I can also confirm that, but if you've watched the show previously, you should know better than to believe anything I say.
Are you actually a ChatGPT? That would be one of my questions. I would just push it all into that and let it give me the answers and then read from that.
I'm literally just reading a script that ChatGPT put together right now. It's perfect. All right. Without further ado, I am going to take an attempt at presenting Doug's slides. What we're going to be discussing is how we can address telco challenges or the service provider challenges in the telecommunication space with VMware and VMware's Service Provider and Edge business unit. So first of all, if you weren't aware, VMware has a business unit that is dedicated to that space of the service provider edge. There is a lot that goes on at that space that VMware brings value to, and so they specialize into that world. If you've never worked in the SP carrier or telco space, it is a fully different world from the rest of the way tech operates. I remember thinking I knew the heck out of networking until I got thrown into a conversation in that space where networking is a very different beast at very different scale. So hence the dedicated BU at VMware to be able to properly service those customers and their unique needs. When we're looking at those unique needs, one of the big pieces of that right now is the 5G deployment or the rollout of 5G replacing 4G, or more accurately, I believe, LTE. When we're looking to replace that, we also need to understand what our deployment operational challenges are. This isn't just a physical infrastructure upgrade where I'm upgrading the dishes on the towers to be able to put more bandwidth and higher density connections out there. I need to really think about the new businesses and services that 5G will be enabling to my end user customers as the service provider and what my operational challenges will be around this. So I'm going to have a great deal of operational complexity as I'm deploying these, as we're deploying these to cloud architectures with new virtualized network functions or NFVs. I can slow down my deployments with that. I'll have scale challenges. I'll have challenges of working with multiple vendors, both across my physical infrastructure and my cloud or software application delivery infrastructure. And then I've got a lot of issues with how I'm going to deliver service availability, making sure that across this disparate and complex environment, I can keep my availability of my service up for my customers at the rates that they expect or exceeding those expectations. So 5G comes with a lot of operational challenges, but you also have to imagine that it comes with a lot of new opportunities for service providers and carriers. When we hit that 5G cellular speed and density, we're able to start really looking at 5G as my primary source, as my primary internet link, as my primary network uplink. We're starting to look at the ability to connect enough devices at that edge to run things like edge computing data centers and other services that might involve heavy, dense IoT or Internet of Things connected devices. So there's a lot of opportunity that's driving the need to address these challenges. As we look forward, these cloud service providers or CSPs are expecting vendors to lead them to a more automation-led network. And what we want to think about is why we're driving that automation into the network. So we need to expedite the rate at which we can deploy new applications and services, the rate at which we can change on a given network, especially from a SP perspective or a service provider perspective. We're running multiple network functions that support our users and the applications, services, and devices connected to our cellular network. As those devices change and what those devices connected to the network change, what they're doing, those functions that I need to operate will change rapidly. So I need two things. I need the agile adaptability to what's actually being drawn off my network, being able to scale up and down specific network functions when and where required. I'm also going to need the ability to deploy new network functions, test them, ensure they're production ready, and get them into a production environment more quickly. Now, this becomes really interesting because automation can speed up both sides of that coin. And when you look at this space of service providers or telcos, they're often looking at testing and validation cycles that range up to 12 months, meaning I have an idea, I build an application or service for my network or a new architecture. I'm going to test and validate that for an entire year before I roll it out in production. That is a lot of lag between business idea, service initiative, and production customer deployment. If we can use automation and orchestration across the full life cycle of an application, we can shrink that down without inducing risk into that SP's model. So we need this automation to rein in the complexity and increase the agility across my IT skill set, my multi-cloud, my partner ecosystem, the orchestration and programmability that sits here, and being able to do this at scale. All of these things are interestingly the bread and butter of the VMware product portfolio. These are things that VMware delivers on extremely effectively across traditional IT infrastructure that they are bringing into that SP and telco space at that radio area network or RAN core layer of the stack.
Excellent, Joe. My first comment is just a very good description, and I'm very impressed. I'm sorry, Sabrina. I'm sure you would like to find something to poke at there, but I would just ask one question on the earlier one. Could you put that into the context of what the environment looks like today for service providers, especially now in the year 2023?
So I think that's a great question, Doug. And I think when we're really looking at this, in the past, as we were upgrading our cellular networks as a service provider, we were upgrading because we had to. It was more of a keeping up with the Joneses, going from the original cellular up through 3G and then to 4G or LTE. And it was really about keeping up with the Joneses, making sure we were providing the same speeds as our competition, or if we were the fastest telco to roll it out, being marketed as the fastest or the widest coverage. When we start to look at what 5G can truly enable, it is an enabling technology for new business models and services. So it's no longer just important to me to keep up with the Joneses to upgrade to 5G. It's also important to me to drive those new business models. Those are new revenue streams for my customers, which means new revenue streams for me. In doing that, I have to be faster, and not just faster to market with 5G towers, faster to market with functions, services, and applications on that 5G network that better support my end customers as a service provider. Does that make sense?
It definitely makes sense. It didn't answer my specific question, but I think what you said was completely head on. I think my question was more regarding the actual macro micro situation that telcos are in, or communication service providers today, in terms of inflation, in terms of high interest rates, in terms of energy shortages, things like that they're having to deal with, going past the peak usage of 5G deployments, how they're managing all of these different factors, and how they can find, deal with the risks, but also find the opportunities. And you alluded to that with risks and opportunities. So that was excellent. I was just looking for that little extra, what's the environment today that's making it extra tough on CSPs.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to have to ask that you expand on that a bit when you go back through these, because we have exceeded the limit of my BS capability when we start to get that far out into the macro view.
We'll see if we exceed mine as well, but continue.
Excellent. So as we move forward, what are we looking at when we're looking at the VMware stack that's being brought into this telco cloud? How are we modernizing a network for a cloud native 5G? So we start at the bottom with any given old hardware, right? This is any commodity hardware, any specialized hardware, anything you want that is basically operating on the x86 chipset principles. So we can run with whatever hardware you're looking at. And then we layer over some things that are very familiar from the VMware stack from the traditional IT professionals. vSphere to virtualize the hypervisor and provide virtualized workloads or virtual machines. We've got things like VMware NSXT to provide networking and security enhancements to the traditional vSphere. We've got VMware vSAN to be able to bring in virtual storage area network concepts into that. And then vRealize operations to be able to automate and begin to orchestrate what we're doing. That then can plug into the next layer of the stack, which is still traditional VMware infrastructure focused, but being brought and tailored into the service provider space. So we move into the orchestration layer with VMware vCloud Director or VCD, and over into the Kubernetes and container world with VMware's Tanzu. Above that traditional IT layer of VMware stack and hardware, now we're running into the specialized tools for the telco world. VMware Telco Cloud Automation and VMware Telco Cloud Service Assurance. And when you think about the idea of that automation and assurance, what I want you to be thinking is full lifecycle management for a service or application being deployed to that telco. So what we get on the top of this is the ability to virtualize the different network functions that a telco relies upon. Now, these functions are wide and various, but think about things like your cell phone connecting. Some piece of software on the back of that has to recognize that your cell phone came into this tower's range, that it needs to connect, that it needs to be verified, that you need a data plan, all that different stuff. Those are broad examples that are very loose of different functions that have to sit within that telco cloud. And so being able to virtualize those does a lot for us. It allows us to rapidly scale them up and down based on the needs. So an example I always think about when I'm thinking about this space is if I have a football stadium, a giant NFL US football stadium on a Tuesday at 9 a.m., it is probably empty and there is not a whole lot of need for cellular coverage there. But on Super Bowl Sunday, if the Super Bowl's happening there, I now have a very different level of requirement for how many phones can connect, how many devices can connect, how many devices can be addressed and handled and secured and connected and all the rest of the things. So having that virtualization layer allows me to scale up broadly across demand. And that's an extreme example, but it illustrates the point. What we're getting out of the VMware stack here is the ability to do this specifically tailored to the requirements of the service provider.
Excellent.
So when we look, thank you.
What's that, Doug? You hated it? It's awful. Oh God.
There must be a lot of noise on the communication link. I said it was excellent.
Weird. I'm still hearing terrible. That's very strange.
No, Joe he's acing it. This is excellent, Joe.
Thank you. So one of the big differentiators, or one of the big advantages to deploying VMware in this case, is the normalization or consistency that it begins to provide to the infrastructure layer. If I'm using the VMware stack for my telco core on this 5G deployment, it doesn't matter which cloud provider I may be running specific infrastructure under. It doesn't matter if this is on-premises infrastructure that I own or on-premises infrastructure that I put into my trusted colo or hosting facility. I'm getting a normal and consistent process from the infrastructure layer. Everything from the traditional VMware stack is normalizing up to my virtual machine or my virtual container and the networking and security protocols between those from an infrastructure perspective. But then I'm layering in more normalization that is service provider specific as I move up that stack into things like SASE, into edge computing, up above that across the board, from the far edge with edge native apps through the radio area network, all the way back out to the public cloud where the applications run. What does normalization and consistency mean to me? It means less operational uplift, less complexity, and anytime I reduce complexity, I decrease risk. A complex system has more risk, and when it breaks, has longer lag from a troubleshooting, recovery, remediation perspective. So anytime we can reduce complexity, we're theoretically going to reduce risk, cost at the same time. And so that's one of the big benefits here, is that I no longer have to make a decision up front using my crystal ball as to which infrastructure or cloud provider I'm going to use forever. I can simply normalize providing consistency on my infrastructure and services across that infrastructure. So within this, these reasons, these differentiators, these value propositions of this environment are why you're seeing such a fast-growing ecosystem of telco network functions. It's this speed, this automation, this orchestration, and this application lifecycle management that is required. And so you're seeing a rich ecosystem of network functions partners out there. Companies from NEC to Nokia, across to F5, Huawei, Fortinet. So you're looking at traditional IT players. You're looking at SP and cellular focused players. You're looking at all kinds of different technology vendors coming together to create this ecosystem of functions that can run virtually, providing a whole lot better agility across that telco infrastructure. And that is what VMware is delivering to this market. So when I look at this in brief summary, what I'm looking at from a VMware platform here is the ability to bring that trusted and true automation, orchestration, and application lifecycle management that has been proven to build and lead markets in the traditional IT infrastructure space, and bringing that into my 5G deployment on the radio area network or RAN space as I'm deploying my core. And then layering in the technology, software, and platforms that VMware is bringing specific to my space to carry my telco provider network into the future. Thank you very much. And let's see what Doug thought.
Doug thought that was excellent. And it's not strange that you're working transformation continuum, working and helping us with our enablement material and to help instruct our field sales. You're taking complicated things that could be complicated messages, and you're clarifying them and making them very easy to absorb and understand, and breaking them down into their root components. And explaining not just the why, but the what and the how, I think in your description. So, I mean, there's a few extra things I could add, and we'll see if I get them when I give my presentation. You also did it in such a clear way. It's clear to me as well that you have such a holistic understanding of the market from multiple vendors and industry trends that this is like an innate language for you to discuss. I mean, I think I could have shown you 5 blank slides and you would have been able to run through that as well, because it's a very clear and logical and relevant story to what's happening today.
Agreed, and I appreciate that. I think very much, right. We're seeing that technology is moving to the point where it's changing business again, and we got a ton of buzzwords for that: the digitalization, and digital transformation we were joking about prior to the show kicking off, right? But the idea is that for a lot of years, I would say maybe 2-3 decades, technology was the thing we needed to keep our operations running. But prior to that, it was a digital transformation agent. I went from typewritten memos to email and accelerated my business functions. We're moving back to that point where technologies like 5G and the cloud truly enable new business models, AI, ML, you name it. And so we're seeing that transition and shift. And what you're talking about here is absolutely relevant to it, not just within that telco space, because when that telco space drives that 5G market, that brings that connectivity to my edge computing, to my IoT, to my business. So it enables every aspect of business across the board. And so this is an easy story to tell.
Yeah, very good. And yeah, you brought out one of the key points, which is we're enabling network service providers, network service providers, but we're providing and giving communication service providers, just like our IT enterprise customers, the ability to realize their business models. And it really should be about business. It's not just about technology. And I think that's something you highlight there. I think a lot of times when people present, we're very good at presenting technology, but we don't actually say, what are the business issues that we're trying to solve? And you highlighted that extremely well.
You know, that's a critical point you make, Doug, because if I'm the CIO and I'm not tying technology to the business, then my only goal becomes ROI. I need to reduce the cost of doing the same thing I did yesterday for the CFO and the CEO. If I'm selling a solution or presenting a solution and I'm not tying it to the business, then the most likely competitive point I'm going to have to meet is cost. I'm not driving value, so cost is my only delimiter.
Yeah, good point. Value versus cost. And that's a lot of times what we end up seeing, especially if you're a vendor selling to a communication service provider and they don't have a strategy that's going to be employing new monetization schemes for their end customers. There's really only one thing they're trying to do is deliver data and then voice and text and what do we call the old one? MSN. What did we call the old one now? I can't even remember. MMS. These you see, we don't even use them anymore because we have all these over-the-top things. So they're just trying to lower the cost, and these aren't the ones that are the innovators in the market. And what's interesting is now communication service providers are also have both an opportunity and a threat from other players that can act like communication service providers that are non-regulated in the market, where they can come in. Just look at social media. You look at when there's an emergency in New Zealand and there was an earthquake. Can't remember the name of the town right now, but in that earthquake, people actually were able to get help through Skype. They couldn't get it through their local operator. So, I mean, and this was like 10 years ago. And now I think there are a lot of cases like this today where where operators have been very connected to regulation of their governments just for emergency services. But we're beginning to see that other providers that are not regulated are coming in and able to provide similar services. So CSPs need to also take advantage of technology to be able to compete back.
Yep, absolutely. I agree. And I can't wait to see how you kind of present this and articulate it and bring in some of that depth of knowledge that you have around the macro environment and the micro environment that these SPs are facing. But before that, I am unfortunately contractually obligated to allow Sabrina to provide some input.
My first piece is, I really did beg before we hit the record button. I begged Doug, please don't be one of those. And here we are. We got 2 excellents. Joe got his first A ever in his entire life. That was exciting. No, but Joe, I hate to say it, but you did a great job. Of course you did a great job. I don't think you're going to do better than Doug, but that's just, history speaking. So I guess let's see.
Well, excellent. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be consistent if I won one of these. And so with that, let's turn it over to Doug and see how we do here in the telco.
So thank you very much for the opportunity again. And I'm here to talk to my favorite communication service providers and address what challenges VMware is helping operators with today. And before I even start, I just want to say that telcos are in the midst of and I'm going to use the word digital transformation again in a stormy market right now, right, where we have high interest rates, which means it's hard to borrow money to invest. There's high inflation. Enterprise customers, they're being a little bit slower right now in current market conditions. Some of them, at least. We're looking at other challenges in terms of energy. I mean, if we look at Europe, it's been a mild winter, luckily, but I mean, this is the first time there have been talks about, okay, what are we going to do to make sure we can even keep the lights on at all the operators in Europe? So, I mean, there's really a need for to help operators, communication service providers, I'll use those words interchangeably, to be able to navigate these storms, to be able to not just modernize their networks and monetize their networks, but also find ways to mitigate the risks and maximize the opportunities. And with that said, let me just say a few words about what are some of the challenges that our analysts and what we're discovering with over 100 customers today that are using and running on our VMware telco platform. I mean, basically, as Joe mentioned, there's lots of operational complexities in this. As we're moving from 4G to 5G, this is something that's exponential. It's not a linear curve. We're talking about thousands of new nodes that are needed. We're talking about distributed networks. And we're talking about things where if you don't find a way to automate this and to find a way to reduce the amount of manpower and even or woman power, it doesn't really matter. It really needs to be automated, because humans can't even work in real time to be able to manage the increase of complexity. So it's not even just a cost question. It's a matter of practicality, as tens of thousands of base stations are being distributed over multiple types of networks. We're seeing also that operators, they're just, when they're trying to scale, and I mentioned it just before, in addition to the complexity of multiple cloud architectures, they have thousands and thousands more, 10 times more at least, of base stations and things that they need to modernize, take care of the life cycle, deploy, commission. I mean, it's really about designing their network. It's about building the network, running the network, managing the network, securing it and protecting it as well, because there's so many security things in the world as well. I forgot to mention that, of course, all these cyber threats. And then there's also sustainability, and that's something else we'll hit on that. Multi-vendor, yeah, operators are also looking at what can they do in order to be able to have best of breed, but at the same time, it has to be a fast process. They have to be able to take these business models that they have and want to bring to the market, and they need to be able to find a way to make sure that if they're bringing in 10 different vendors, it's not going to take 2 years. They're going to be able to do this in weeks, if not days, to bring them on board. And a lot of our most successful customers are running hundreds of different VNFs, virtual network functions, containerized network functions from multiple vendors successfully. But this is a key challenge we're working on addressing, and we're doing it in production today. And then service availability. So we all know that if an operator's network goes down for a day, they're going to lose all their profit for that quarter. So if they can't meet their SLAs, they're in big trouble. So these are the big fears that analysts and what we've learned in the market today are telling us about, that we're trying to address. So what do CSPs expect from vendors? So at VMware, we need to be a thought leader. We just can't come with technology. We need to sit down with the CXO levels and understand, what is your business? Where are you today? Where do you want to go? And how do you want to get there? And depends on the communication service providers. Some are just happy to have a very simple business model. They just want to have data, and they just want to be able to have voice, and they're just looking for ways of lowering that cost. And others are looking at doing more things. They're seeing themselves being a larger player in the ecosystem. And one of the things that we've learned is that many of them now are having to find ways to be able to orchestrate and manage all these different workloads to realize their business across multiple clouds. And this is easier said than done, and VMware has an enormous amount of experience here on the IT and on the telco space. Also, you need to be able to find skilled labor to do this. So there's other solutions out there, but people just don't, it's hard to find the right resources. But luckily, because of the large skill set of people that know how to use VMware, DevOps, developers on the IT side, they can apply this to the network side of the network as well. Partner ecosystem, hey, what am I going to say about that? We make it just as easy as possible for our partners to onboard, even self-certify and validate, and be part of our market space. And partner ecosystem, it's kind of like having an iPhone or a Google Android phone and not have any apps. So the more apps you have, the more valuable it is. And that's what we do. We have hundreds of different network functions, both virtualized and container-based Kubernetes running in this environment. Orchestration and programmability. Yeah, this is basically the heart and the brains of being able to run over multiple clouds, being able to take care of the lifecycle management and the continuous, consistent layer, everywhere from the core to the RAN, to the edge. We talk about far, near edge. Doesn't really matter. It makes one plane of glass where you can manage all of these different network functions, and you can move the workloads where they need to be. I'll continue on that in a second. And then automation at scale. So you can scale up and scale down. And as Joe mentioned, it depends on the loads and the amount of consumption that's taking place. So you can move the workloads to where they need to be, and you can scale them up based on the number of users of that time of day that need to use those specific functions. Let me just continue. So how do we do this? So this is just a high-level architectural drawing of a platform. So again, it's like if I go back to the iPhone analogy, when you're using or an Android, you basically just download apps and you use them. You're not thinking about how you're going to orchestrate and manage and the life cycle of all these apps. If you did, it'd be like 20 years ago where many people didn't use a smartphone because it was just too complicated. Network functions, we make it as easy as possible. We have a large ecosystem, and we way on the top. I mean, this is what it's about. On the top, this is about managing and being able to make your business ideas a reality. And I'll talk more about that, but we have a huge partner ecosystem, and we have hundreds of CSPs deploying this around the world today. If I start from the bottom, where I probably should have is, maybe not, is we have so just standard commercialized hardware. Yeah, great. That's where VMware comes from. And we have the network, we have the compute, we have the storage, we have the management. Those are all some of the baseline things. But unique to telco is if you want to have infrastructure as a service, well, then you're going to be having, we have like the VMware Cloud Director, we have VIO, which was a really big thing before, of OpenStack. And now with containers, yeah, we have the Tanso standards that allow us to have containerized services. And as we know, many people are very interested. This is where the market clearly is. So we see every year that more and more of our partners are making containerized network services, and there's business reasons for this: agility, DevOps, the ability to quickly be able to bring on board new ideas, new applications, and manage the lifecycle. Automation, like I mentioned, is the heart of this, being able to create the network functions and network services that you need. There's a lot more that can be said about this than the time that we have right now. And this is something that's, I'd say, very unique to VMware, and it just completely revolutionizes the day zero, day one, day two operations and lifecycle management. On top of that, we have the Telco Cloud Service Assurance. And why is this important? This is a multi-layer, multi-vendor way of making sure that you can understand all your configurations, find out whether or not problems are happening before they occur, and even do something that's like full closed loop automation. So if something is detected in the service assurance layer, it can talk to the Telco Cloud automation layer, and you can do automatic remediation. So you can go in and instantiate new VNFs or CNFs, or make changes in the network where you maybe move workloads to other areas that are damaged or had some problem. Maybe there was a storm in a certain area and one of your network centers went down, so you can move the workloads to another area. So this is a completely enclosed system. And right now it says it's 5G, but this is 5G either at the core, it can be in the RAN space. So this is a platform that changes depending on where it is. It can be configured for large multi-server, multi-CPU workloads down to very small edge cases or RAN cases where you're just running a DU, a distributed unit. But one other thing that makes this extremely interesting for communication service providers that are looking for a revolutionary view is that instead of just running at these sites all over with your base stations, DUs, you can run as well additional services like mobile edge computing. Whereas if you just go with a siloed approach that we traditionally have had before, or some network equipment provider just sells you a closed solution, this is allowing you to open up your network. So I just wanted to say that in addition to modernizing the network, we also work with RAN desegregation and programmability and edge. And let me say just a little bit more about that as we move on and just conclude here. So again, it's about any workload, it's about any cloud over any type of device. And what I wanted to say here is that if we're looking at situations, for instance, if we look at RAN today, people are looking a lot like the mobile core, but you also have like your RAN network, for instance, just to give an example. We come above that, and VMware also has something called the RAN intelligent controller that's on top of a virtualized RAN or on top of an ORAN that VMware provides. And this allows you to program your network. So let me give you an example. You could actually go into the radio network where it was closed before, and you could program it with one of our multiple partners. We have many of them that will allow you to, for instance, get twice the spectral efficiency for the same amount of energy. That's just one type of application using like our apps. Another one is that you can actually go in with this programmability and you can actually look at which base stations are being used and not used, and actually depower or shut down the ones not being used, decreasing the carbon footprint, for instance, in terms of sustainability. We have about, I don't remember, say over 10 different partners in the RAN intelligent controller space with multiple demos that we can show you to show you how you can get much more out of your network than if you just go with a static RAN. And again, we're providing multiple services for you across the entire board with consistency, lifecycle management. We're helping you make the move from 4G to 5G. And also, if we're just going to summarize now, we're helping you to take your business models, realize them, and design the way you want to have it with VMware's proven solutions, build it, deploy it, run it, manage it, secure it, protect it, and also get sustainability out of it, and be able to handle these stormy environments that I mentioned in the beginning. And we can help you turn your challenges into business opportunities. Thank you very much.
And that, Joe, is how it's done. Nicely done. I like it. I like it a lot. Really nicely done.
Thank you. But I have to be honest, when Joe, when he presented, I'm like, that's fantastic. You were very clear. And there's different ways of doing it in different styles. And I really appreciated Joe's style as well. Mm-hmm. Sorry, Sabrina.
It's all right. It's all right. You're still one of my favorites. But
thank you.
I like what you did is you spoke in really sort of chunk sizes. You both did a great job of speaking to the business. And I think that's a part that often gets overlooked and is so critical right now. You touching on sustainability obviously is one of the most important, hottest topics right now. And understanding, I learned things and I thought I was pretty close to VMware, so really understanding what does that look like, especially as, telcos trying to figure out, what does that look like for them? What does this evolve into for them? So, and then, like I said, speaking to the business and speaking in those chunk size, I really enjoyed it. It captured your attention. It sustained your attention. You could see how it applies to your business and, of course, to the technology side of our world. And it was a lot shorter and better than Joe's. So, yeah, nicely done.
Thank you. If I was going to criticize myself, thank you. I'd say I went a little bit fast because I'm like, okay, yeah, let me try to pump some things in here. And I was thinking like for maybe non-native speakers, it could have been a bit fast, so forth. But
I don't think so. I think that's what it appealed to was, maybe you're not, as well versed in VMware. I don't know how you couldn't be, but maybe for those folks, no, I thought it was a great pace. And just the right amount of depth that if I was your favorite telco client, I'd have some areas where I could say, hey, let's unpack that. Let's dive deeper there. That's a little tricky.
Yeah, I guess that's the best we can hope for. And I don't know what I'd call this. This is more than an elevator pitch, but it's less than you've been given 10 minutes. I don't even know how long time I took. I have no clue.
About 10 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, about 10 minutes. So there were a couple of things that I loved in your presentation. The first was just, I love seeing kind of where VMware's come and where a lot of the foundation of what they started with has changed, stayed, but changed in the value, right? I've been working with VMware since the GSX days, before ESX, before ESXi, before vSphere.
Wow, what an experience.
Yeah, like I was deploying very early virtualization solutions when the value was recouping trapped capacity on my server. It was being able to fully utilize the single physical hardware aspects of a given physical server.
Yes.
As we started to build that out, VMware's automation took over as the main value. That became baseline, and it's all the automation and then orchestration and then these higher value business functions to be able to build out the programmability. And so I love seeing how that continues to transition. VMware's never lost its roots, but it's continued to add value on that chain.
Right, like it's going in multiple layers as it's moving up from virtualization. It's maturing, and it would have been interesting if we understood that back then. Maybe some people did, others didn't, but it's interesting in hindsight to see how it's grown. Yeah.
Yeah, and I even look back, I have customers that like accidentally automated. They deployed VMware to get the hypervisor stack. And then all of a sudden realized vMotion and this and that are the automation I needed, right? So accidental automation is my term for that.
I love that. That's a fantastic term, accidental automation. Yeah. AA.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing you did really well is illustrate the need and the need for full flexibility, but also the way VMware delivers on it to service provider. My favorite example you used is the ability to power down devices when they're not in use. So if we go back to my Super Bowl example, in the old world of telco, I would have had to have all of those devices powered up and ready at capacity for what max peak I expected. Now, I could have turned them on that morning maybe, but you're still ramping them up full speed, waiting for this one event. Now I can do that very flexibly as people enter the stadium, as workers get in, as the fans get in, and the rest. But the other thing is thinking about the rest of the functions that VMware can automate and orchestrate. So if we take that Super Bowl day and we think about what are we all doing on our phones at the game, we're talking about multimedia messaging system, MMS. I'm going to be taking pictures. I'm going to be sending to my friends. Look at how great my seats are. Or I'm behind this stanchion and can't see anything. Whatever it is, it's going to be picture focused. It's going to be text. No one's making a phone call. Now, if the next day after the Super Bowl, we're having a sales conference, that's probably very limited MMS, probably a lot of email, which would be internet traffic, and probably a lot of cell phone calls. I got to take this customer call. I got to break away from this session real quick. So the ability to spin up the specific functions that support the different uses on the network based on the events that are happening in real time is VMware's bread and butter in this space.
And that's something very good. I would remember to put into my 10-minute presentation. I like the way you said that, the way you can adapt to the various use cases on demand and utilize your network and grow it and shrink it in the most appropriate way. And especially with sustainability, I'm thinking so much about that. It's like the 1 billion. It's like I can't remember exactly, but I think airlines are approximately 2% of the total 40 billion ton carbon footprint, and communication service providers. And I don't know exactly how they measure these numbers, but let's say it's like a little over 1 billion billion metric tons. These are things that I think what I understand is, and we're going to be having a whole session on this at VMware, is how we can help reduce an airline industry of carbon footprint by improving the efficiency of the communication network. So it also plays a key role.
Yeah, absolutely. Traditionally, we've been beholden to design networks like we design potable water systems, right? If you think about the potable water system for a city, I've got a design for peak capacity, which is somewhere around 8 or 9 a.m. when everyone's taking their shower and getting ready for maybe 7, 8, right? Yeah. So we get these huge water towers with a bunch of water that's gravity fed to handle that major demand. We put in pipes big enough to handle that demand across the whole town, and we use it at that rate for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Rest of the time, it's big empty pipes.
Unused capacity. Yep.
Right. And so now with VMware and the way we're moving technology, we're able to right size our networking pipes, our service provider function pipes to the demand in real time.
That's a very, very good analogy. I like that. I've heard other ones about like use your car 1% of the day, but now you're actually able to give your car to everyone else around you and it's being used 100%. Not that I'd want them to do that with my car. So I like your pipe analogy better.
Absolutely. Well, that's great. So I guess this brings us to the moment of truth, which is on Sabrina, who presented it better.
Oh, come on, Joe.
And just because, you be honest now. We still love you and still work with you, even if it's not the case.
I have yet to meet somebody who's rooting as much for Joe to win as you are, Doug. But truthfully, I think, again, all jokes aside, Joe, you really did a great job. And you clearly understand the space and sort of the competitive realm, around it, or, what would be. But I have to give this one to Doug. Doug, you brought it home. You brought it down to the business, but you also talked about, you got less into the weeds around the tech, which is really where people are. You talked about one of my favorite topics, and like I said, one of the key hot topics right now around sustainability and what this really means. And if I'm really giving like bonus points, I enjoyed the conversation at the end. I think that really brought it all home. So yes. Yeah, Doug, I gotta give this one to you. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And next time I meet you, Joe, I'll share the prize with you.
Excellent. And Doug, I have to echo Sabrina. You definitely won. I think what really separated your presentation, amongst other things, is your intimate knowledge of your SP customers' business, right? Understanding the things like an interest rate change and how that affects them. And so for the audience that might not be familiar, you're talking about multiple $million investments to deploy new towers, to run fiber to those towers, to run power over Ethernet up those towers, to put new dishes on those towers. These are huge investments to build the infrastructure that typically come off of loans. So if that interest rate changes, my ability to expand, to grow, changes.
Exactly. I mean, I think this discussion is also very useful. It makes me think, in these 10 minutes, it could also, if I'm sure if we did this 2 times, like ran this 2 times, our little session now, we would make the best sales pitch possible, for a communication service provider, if you know what I mean. Like the ideas are very good. So appreciate that.
And it's fun. You two are fun.
It's fun.
Together. Yeah.
Yeah. You're a fun team. I like working with you. All of you.
Well, Doug, this has been a pleasure. It's been a great episode. I enjoyed it quite a bit. And I did like your slide deck because it provided that kind of natural story flow, which makes this more entertaining, right? It allows a thread to be pulled, which is great. So thank you very much for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for being a part of Tech Deck Karaoke with both of you. So I wish you were remaining part of your day over there in the US and here in Europe after a few more meetings. Looking forward to a pleasant evening. So thanks again.
And thank you. And thank you, Sabrina, for normalizing me into a consistent loser.
It's a hard job, but someone's got to do it, Joe. Someone's got to. It's,
You guys are just too much fun. I love it. Okay.
Take care, all. Thanks for joining us.
Take care.